And we begin with what comes next for Hunter Biden. After a jury yesterday found him guilty on all 3 felony charges on his federal gun trial, the president's son had pleaded not guilty to the 3 counts tied to lying on a federal gun application about his drug use. Sources inside the defense room tell NBC News that following the verdict, Hunter Biden thanked everyone there by name, hugged them, and tried to raise their spirits. He later issued this public statement, quote, "I am more grateful today for the love and support I experienced this last week from Melissa, my family, my friends, and my community than I am disappointed by the outcome. The recovery is possible by the grace of God, and I am blessed to experience that gift one day at a time." Special counsel David Weiss spoke briefly to reporters following the verdict.
No one in this country is above the law. Everyone must be accountable for their actions, even this defendant. However, Hunter Biden should be no more accountable than any other citizen convicted of this same conduct. The prosecution has been and will continue to be committed to this principle and to the principles of federal prosecution in carrying out its responsibilities.
Hunter Biden and his attorney have said they plan to appeal this verdict. As I mentioned, President Biden issued a statement reacting to the verdict in his son's gun trial. It reads in part, "I will accept the outcome of this case and will continue to respect the judicial process as Hunter considers an appeal. Jill and I will always be there for Hunter and the rest of our family with our love and support. Nothing will ever change that," end quote. Last week, the president said very clearly he will not pardon his son. President Biden also had an emotional reunion with Hunter late yesterday. The two hugged on the tarmac after the president changed his schedule and flew to Delaware following an event in Washington, Joe.
Yeah, I just wonder. The prosecutor said that Hunter Biden shouldn't be treated differently than anybody else. So why was he? Because he was. If his last name was Smith, these charges would have never been brought. If his last name was Jones, they would have never blown up the plea deal that they already had done, that the judge respected. I mean, you know, again, I'm a big believer. It went to the jury, and I believe in the system. And we'll always believe in the system. But he doesn't need to come out and lie and say that Hunter Biden's being treated like everybody else, because Hunter Biden is there because of his last name. End of story. And a lot of Trump people could say the same thing about what happened in Manhattan with Alvin Bragg. But in this case, Biden was there because of his last name and nothing else.
And by the way, some Republicans have said the same, Joe. Senator Lindsey Graham said that last week. You even had some very pro-Trump Republican members of Congress, again, as I said, disappointed, I think, by this outcome because they wanted to show a 2-tiered system of justice, saying that this trial had always been kind of silly, that it was a distraction from more serious things to look at with Hunter Biden. They're saying that now after the fact. Let's bring in former litigator and MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin. Lisa, good morning. What's your reaction to the verdict in Delaware?
My reaction, Willie, is that this is the paradigmatic both-and situation. What I mean by that is you can find that the jury's conviction here is just that Hunter Biden knowingly possessed and applied for a firearm, understanding that he had been an addict and that addiction is a continuing state, that it doesn't stop and start, but rather once an addict, always an addict. And at the same time, as Joe said, you can not only find this situation to be totally tragic, but believe that it never should have happened in the first place, that the plea deal that was engineered between the U.S. Attorney's Office and between Hunter Biden's then lawyers was one that should have been honored. And it fell apart principally for 2 reasons. It fell apart first because the prosecutors wouldn't commit themselves to saying that the plea deal fully resolved all possible investigations against Hunter Biden, including those under the Foreign Agent Registration Act stemming from his work in Ukraine. But the other reason it fell apart is because the judge who oversaw this trial, Mary Ellen Noreika, bristled at the idea that she should have to supervise the question of whether Hunter would be in compliance with the diversion agreement that was set up to handle the gun charges. And the reason that that deal was struck in the way that it was is an unspoken reason, and I'll tell you what it is. It's because the prosecutors here and Hunter Biden's lawyers feared that because the diversion agreement was 2 years in duration, in a possible future Department of Justice controlled by Trump and or another Republican who was retributive against Hunter Biden, that person would have an excuse to say Hunter Biden was out of compliance, that he deserved to be thrown in prison. They didn't want a future Republican DOJ to have control over that decision. And therefore, in the plea agreement, they engineered it so that the judge would oversee that determination. When they presented the plea deal to her last July, she said, why should I be in control of that? That's not my decision to make. But what she didn't understand and what no one could say to her on the record is we're doing it this way because we fear retribution against Mr. Biden if it's not set up this way, Your Honor.
Lisa, could you speak to the jury what happened yesterday, a jury trial? The son of the President of the United States of America is on trial in Delaware. His neighbors, Delaware residents, are sitting in judgment of him. 12 ordinary people, citizens, sitting in on judgment on the son of the president. The president doesn't interfere in this case.
No.
The president announces that he will not pardon his son. Hunter knows that he lied on the application. That's why he's there. At the end of the day, do you think ordinary Americans give enough thought to how this system is a miracle, a gift to this country, a gift to democracy, the jury system, and the way it works? It worked in New York, and it worked in Wilmington.
And most of the time, Mike, it does work. I wish they would give more thought to the miracle that is our jury system. It's endemic to the democracy that many of us believe is teetering on the brink right now. This is a testament to what is unshakable about our democracy. I was really struck by the 3 jurors who came forward yesterday and talked to members of the media, and one in particular who essentially said to our Katie Tur yesterday, look, I think this case should have been prosecuted. I believe the charges should have been brought. I believe he was guilty of those charges. And yet, I believe jail time here is entirely inappropriate because not only of how the charges came about, but because of some of the underlying facts here. This is a person who has brought his life around. He is married. He has a young son. He's earning a living. And the circumstances that led to the charges in the first place. Let's remember, Hunter Biden owned a gun for 11 days. And the reason that the gun was ever recovered in the first place was because his sister-in-law, Hallie Biden, with whom he had been romantically involved, was so fearful that he might use the gun to harm himself that unthinkingly she took the gun and deposited it in a trash can outside a Wilmington grocer. That struck a chord with that particular juror. And again, paradigmatic both and situation. I believe this case should have been brought. I believe he was guilty of it, and yet I can see it as the tragedy that it is.
President Biden learned of the verdict while he was at the White House preparing for, ironically enough, a speech on gun safety. He then changed plans, made an unscheduled trip back to Wilmington, Delaware. He embraced his son on the tarmac. You see there, the family spent last night in Wilmington, and then the president will fly this morning to Italy and the G7. And I have reporting that in recent weeks, ahead of the trial, President Biden made the point, Joe, that you did, saying that if he weren't running for re-election, he believed that Hunter would have gotten that plea deal that fell apart last summer at the last moment, that plea deal which would have kept Hunter Biden out of prison. And now, we shall see, but he could face a lengthy prison time, possibly, depending on what the judge decides. And in terms of the fallout going forward, first and foremost, this is a personal toll on President Biden. We know how close he is to his son. He texts and calls him each and every day. Aides worry about that, both on this overseas trip and as sentencing approaching. As far as the politics, which we'll dive into later, campaign aides, both for Biden and Trump, don't think this will change the trajectory of the race, but they do suspect it will be a flashpoint come their first debate, where Donald Trump may make some very personal, ugly attacks at President Biden. And we should expect President Biden to stay. There's some aides want him to even flash a temper there and say, look, I'm a father. This is my son. This is inappropriate, thinking that could resonate with voters. It would be because it would be a very real human response. And the Biden campaign, as a final point, they are going to continue using nomenclature like convicted felon to describe Donald Trump. They're not going to back away from that because Donald Trump's on the ballot. Hunter Biden is not.
Let's be very clear about this. in the debate? Because I've heard a lot of people talking about this concern. Mike Barnicle, if I'm Joe Biden and I'm on the debate stage with Donald Trump and he starts talking about Hunter Biden as some sort of retort against his own 34 felonies, I'd stop, I'd turn, I'd look around the stage and go, excuse me, hold on. I don't see Hunter Biden up here. Hold on, Donald, let me check.
Maybe
I don't see Eric over there. Wait, Eric's not here, so I'm not running against Eric. I'm running against you, Donald, and you're not running against Hunter Biden or the ghost of Hunter Biden, who's not here. You're running against me. And up here, the two people that are going to run this country for the next 4 years, of the two of us, only one has been convicted of a felony. And you've been convicted of 34 felonies, Donald. So let's leave our kids out of this. Let's leave our family out of this. You don't want me to start talking about what you and your kids and your in-laws did in your name to get rich off of your back during the presidency. Boom. That's it.
Saudi Arabia.
Ends it. And you know what? He shouldn't take any crap from Trump, and he needs to be ready. Because Donald Trump has 34 felony convictions. Joe Biden, none. Those are the two people on stage. And he shouldn't. Biden's people should double down right now and go harder at Trump than ever before on the fact he's a convicted felon.